You're not broke because you're lazy. You're broke because you were programmed to be. Keep watching till the end, because once you understand the final truth, you'll never see money the same way again. Let's get real. This isn't about grinding harder or waking up at 5 a.m. This is about becoming the person you were never allowed to be. From your first breath, the world handed you a script built not to elevate you, but to domesticate you. They gave you a name, but not a purpose. They taught you how to earn a living, but never how to build a life. They disguised your doubts as realism and your dreams as delusion. And worst of all, you believed them. Carl Jung once said, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parent." And you've been carrying that burden, not just financial debt, but emotional debt, generational trauma, an identity you never chose. You inherited a survival mindset in a world that demands innovation. You were taught to follow rules, not to break limits. Now you wonder why success feels foreign, why wealth slips through your fingers. Because the truth is, you're not operating from your power, you're operating from your programming. Let's start with truth number one. You're not broke, you're programmed. You were never taught how to build wealth. You were taught to fear it. You were trained to obey, not to innovate, to follow, not to lead, to survive, not to thrive. You were told, go to school, get good grades, find a stable job, and don't question the system. But no one ever taught you how to own your time or your mind. So now you're tired, underpaid, watching success from the outside, feeling like there's some secret club you were never invited to. Carl Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. And that's exactly what's happening. It's not fate. It's not laziness. It's your subconscious blueprint. You weren't born broke. You were conditioned to normalize lack. You feel guilty asking for more. You sabotage your own wins. You shrink your dreams to fit the life you've been handed. And deep down, you're terrified of more, because more feels unsafe. Truth number two, you don't have a money problem. You have an identity problem. You've been trying to install wealth on a system built for poverty. That's like trying to launch an empire on a virus-infected laptop. It doesn't matter how much money you earn. If your identity hasn't evolved, you'll reject abundance. It's not your income that needs changing. It's your operating system. Until you feel safe with money, you will keep sabotaging every step forward. You'll overspend. You'll panic. You'll stay broke. Because that's the version of you the world programmed. Truth number three, your spending habits are emotional, not financial. You think you're bad with money? You're not. You're at war with your shadow. Ever bought something you didn't need just to feel better for 5 minutes? That's not stupidity. That's pain. That's trauma. Overspending isn't carelessness. It's a cry for comfort. It's your shadow self, the hidden part of you that carries all your shame, your heartbreak, your insecurity, screaming for attention, and so you spend. Not for joy, but to silence the ache, to feel powerful just for a moment in a life that makes you feel invisible. Truth number four, what you bury doesn't die. It drives your decisions. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the repressed, hidden self. You buried your pain, but that pain now runs your finances. You don't need another budget. You need to face the void, because until you confront what's actually hurting, you'll keep buying things that don't heal. Millionaires aren't just smart with money. They're emotionally mature. They've faced their discomfort. They've tamed their nervous system. They've stopped chasing dopamine and started building discipline. Truth number 5, your nervous system fears money. Let's go deeper. You think you fear being broke, but the truth is, your body fears being wealthy. Why? Because your earliest memories of money were filled with tension, fights over bills, embarrassment at the register, late rent, declined cards. You were a child, but your nervous system remembered it all. So now, growth feels unsafe. Success feels like betrayal. Wealth feels like chaos. You undercharge. You procrastinate. You delay. Not because you're lazy, but because your nervous system still thinks money weren't pain. So every time you get close to change, you sabotage it. You burn out. You scroll for hours. You stay busy, but never move forward. And then you blame yourself. But the truth is, you're not stuck. You're scared, and your body is loyal to your past, not your potential. Truth number 6, being broke feels familiar, so you stay loyal to it. Here's a hard truth. People don't stay stuck because they can't grow. They stay stuck because they're attached to the pain they know. Struggle is familiar. Scarcity is familiar. And your ego clings to the familiar like it's home, even when it hurts. Carl Jung explained it clearly. The ego prefers what is familiar, even if it's destructive. Why? Because what's familiar feels safe, and what feels safe becomes identity. You say you want freedom, you say you want abundance, but deep down, you're still loyal to the version of you who was trained to survive, not thrive. The version of you who equates discomfort with danger, who chooses stress over silence, who finds peace almost suspicious. And so every time you rise, you unconsciously pull yourself back down because winning feels foreign, because struggle feels like home. Truth number 7, you were never taught to hold wealth, only to chase it. You grind, you hustle, you work harder than most, but the moment money shows up, you burn it, you overspend, you underinvest, you blow up your own blessings, because no one taught you how to feel safe with surplus. You were only taught how to hustle for survival. Wealth isn't just numbers at a bank. It's a nervous system regulation. It's a capacity. And if your inner world can't hold more, you'll reject more. Truth number 8, you inherited shame around money and called it being realistic. You think dreaming big is naive. You think wanting more is greedy. You think playing small is humble. It's conditioning. It's a mental cage built by generations who were too afraid to want more. You didn't invent that fear. You inherited it. They called it realism. But it was just fear, dressed up in logic. Wanting wealth doesn't make you greedy. Avoiding it doesn't make you pure. You're not a better person because you suffer. And you're not more spiritual because you're broke. You're just programmed. And until you update that program, you'll keep mistaking fear for truth. Truth number 9, money trauma is stored in your body, not just your bank. Let's go deeper. The real block isn't financial, it's biological. Your nervous system was trained to panic at prosperity. Every time you get close to breaking through, your body slams the brakes. You freeze. You distract yourself. You start something new instead of finishing. Why? Because safety matters more than success. You don't avoid money because you're lazy. You avoid it because somewhere inside, it still feels like danger. Truth number 10, no one is coming to save you, and that's your greatest power. Let's kill the fantasy. That one mentor, that perfect opportunity, that magical moment where everything just clicks. It's not coming. You were waiting for someone to hand you the throne. But the truth is, you were always the one meant to build it. Carl Jung said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." You've spent years looking outward for answers, for validation, for someone to say, "Now you're ready." But you're not broke because of missing information. You're broke because you're loyal to an outdated identity, an identity that was never yours to begin with. So stop waiting, stop hoping, stop begging for life to give you something you haven't claimed. You want wealth? Rewire your identity, reprogram your subconscious, heal your nervous system. Because this was never about money. It was about becoming who you were always meant to be. The resurrection of wealth. This is where it all changes. Pause, take a breath. Because what you've just heard wasn't a money lesson. It was a mirror. A funeral for the version of you that's kept you stuck, silent, and small. This is the death of the self-doubter. The end of the man who needed permission to rise. The burial of the identity you inherited, so you can finally become the identity you choose. You've spent your life grinding, chasing, proving, but never arriving. Because deep down, you didn't believe you were allowed to arrive. But that changes now, because here's the ultimate truth. Wealth doesn't begin in your wallet. It begins in your worth. It's not about earning more. It's about becoming more. You don't need another tactic. You need a transformation. The world doesn't reward hustle. It rewards alignment. And alignment starts when you stop asking, "How do I get rich?" and start asking, "Who do I have to become to be the kind of man wealth trusts?" Your new identity isn't based on pain. It's based on power. It's built from clarity, not chaos. From purpose, not pressure. From discipline, not desperation. So what now? Now you rise. Not in noise, but in silence. Not for attention, but for legacy. Let others scroll. Let others binge motivation. Let others wait. You execute. You evolve. You embody. Because this time, it's not about proving anything. It's about becoming everything. And if you felt this message hit somewhere deeper than your mind, in your chest, in your spine, in your soul, then it's time to anchor this shift. Right now, go type in the comments, "I kill my old self to become who I was born to be." Not for likes, not for views, but as a declaration, a contract with the version of you who stops surviving and starts leading. Because every king is born twice, once from the womb and once through fire. This question mark, this was your fire. So burn the old story, reclaim the throne, and don't just dream of wealth. Become the man who commands it. If you're ready to keep walking this path of psychological and financial rebirth, subscribe to this channel right now. Drop a comment, hit that like button, and share this with someone who's still stuck in survival mode, because it's time they woke up too. We're not here to play small. We're here to lead empires from the inside out. You've been reborn. Now act like it. The king has returned.